Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast, Is It Worth It? Today we are going deep into Lifou, the largest of New Caledonia's Loyalty Islands, a French-administered island in the South Pacific that most of our listeners have never heard of. And that is exactly the point.
It really is, yeah. I mean, that's kind of the entire foundation of why we're looking at this specific place right at this specific moment in time.
Exactly. So just a quick overview of what we're doing today. We are covering real 2026 costs, and honestly, the spectrum is just wild.
Oh, it really is.
Right. Like we're talking about $36 a night for a local gîte, all the way up to $405 a night for the InterContinental.
Which is quite the jump.
Yeah, it's a massive gap.
Yeah.
And we're also going to look closely at the post-riot recovery that, well, it collapsed visitor numbers by over 52%.
Yeah, which is just devastating for the local economy.
Truly. And then we're going to walk you through the three major logistics traps that catch pretty much absolutely everyone who tries to get here independently.
You really have to know what you're doing.
You do. And finally, we're going to give you the honest verdict on whether Lifou in 2026 is a genuinely rare find or, whether the extreme access difficulty just makes it a beautiful headache.
Because it is a destination that demands a lot of you before you even board the plane.
Absolutely. Just to tease some key stats we'll be unpacking. Daily budgets run from $70 for the incredibly disciplined backpacker to around $300 for a mid-range couple per day.
Yeah, and the best time to visit is June through September. It's dry, it's warm, it's really quiet.
Right. But the main trap, the one that absolutely ruins trips, is transiting through Nouméa. We have 5 distinct travel verdicts waiting at the end of this deep dive. Stay with us.
So, let's get right into the macroeconomic reality of this, because you really cannot understand Lifou in 2026 without understanding the absolute collapse of 2024.
Right. Yeah, let's look at those numbers. So in 2024, international tourist arrivals into New Caledonia dropped below 60,000.
Wow.
Yeah, that is a massive 52.8% collapse in a single year. Just picture what happens to a local economy when more than half of its external revenue just vanishes overnight.
It's basically catastrophic. And to really grasp the scale of that 52.8% drop, you have to understand what New Caledonia was right before this happened.
Right, setting the stage.
Exactly. Prior to 2024, this was a highly functioning, albeit, niche tourism economy. It was reliable.
It had a steady flow.
Yeah, exactly. You had a steady, lucrative stream of cruise ship traffic coming through the Pacific, and you had Australian and New Zealand holiday packages stacked up year-round.
Right, because it was marketed very successfully, I might add, as France's exotic, sophisticated Pacific outpost.
It really was. And then May 2024 completely fractured that image.
It did. And we need to talk about exactly what happened in May 2024 because it dictates the reality on the ground right now.
We do. And it requires looking at the situation with strict impartiality. So in May 2024, severe protests erupted across the territory. And this was specifically triggered by a French electoral reform bill. The core mechanism of this bill was that it would have extended voting rights in local provincial elections to newer French residents.
Got it. So people who had moved to New Caledonia from mainland France and lived there for a certain number of years.
Exactly.
And from the perspective of the French government, that is a standard democratic normalization, right? Like if you live somewhere for a decade, pay taxes, and participate in this society, you generally expect the right to vote in local elections.
Precisely. That was the legislative logic. However, for the indigenous Kanak population, this bill represented an existential political threat.
Right, because of the history there.
Yeah, New Caledonia has a very complex decolonization process that was outlined in the 1998 Nouméa Accord. The Kanak perspective was that by expanding the voter rolls to include thousands of recent arrivals from mainland France, well, the indigenous Kanak vote would be permanently diluted.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, they feared losing electoral control over their own ancestral homeland.
And the tension surrounding that fundamental disagreement over voting rights just snapped.
It really did.
And it evolved into the worst civil unrest the territory had seen since the violent struggles of the 1980s.
Yeah, the human and infrastructural toll was severe. 6 people died, hundreds were injured.
Wow, that's awful.
It was. There was widespread looting, massive arson that destroyed critical supply chains, and, extensive road blockades. But here is the critical geographical footnote that the global news cycle completely ignored.
Okay, what's that?
All of that violence, the blockades, the arson, it was hyper-centralized in and around the capital, Nouméa, on the main island of Grande Terre.
Which brings us to Lifou.
Exactly.
Because Lifou is 200 kilometers east of Nouméa. I mean, it's literally across open Pacific water.
Right. The Loyalty Islands, of which Lifou is the largest, they're completely geographically and experientially insulated from the capital.
So what was happening on Lifou during all this?
On Lifou, there were absolutely no riots. There was no destruction of property.
Oh, wow. None at all.
None. The island's 10,000 residents, who are predominantly Kanak, remained completely peaceful and perfectly safe. They were not engaged in the violence.
Right.
They were simply a community whose political future was being debated in Paris and fought over in Nouméa.
But despite being 200 kilometers away and perfectly peaceful, the tourism economy on Lifou died anyway.
It completely collapsed.
I've been trying to think of an analogy for this. It's like booking a table at a pristine 3-Michelin star restaurant located in a beautiful valley, right?
Okay, I like where this is going.
The chefs are there, the food is prepped, the dining room is spotless. But the only highway leading into the valley, which happens to be 100 miles away, gets shut down by a massive traffic pileup.
Yes.
The restaurant itself is perfect, but it goes bankrupt because literally no one can physically drive to it.
That analogy hits the nail on the head. The product of Lifou didn't fail. The supply chain of visitors failed.
Because the flights stopped.
Exactly. International flights into the territory ground to a halt. And the cruise lines, which, were the absolute lifeblood of Lifou's local vendors, they pulled their itineraries entirely out of an abundance of caution regarding the territory's overall stability.
But the narrative shifts as we sit here in early 2026.
It does.
Because the cruise ships actually quietly returned to Lifou's wharf back in October 2024.
Yeah, they started trickling back in.
And now the territory has launched a massive, aggressive economic relaunch plan. They aren't just trying to recover. They are aiming to bring 250,000 tourists to the region by 2032.
And that 2032 target isn't arbitrary?
No.
Not at all. The territory is explicitly prioritizing the return of Japanese charter flights and fiercely trying to rebuild trust in the Australian and New Zealand market.
Well, because of the Olympics.
Exactly. The Brisbane 2032 Olympics is going to be a massive regional catalyst. Every Pacific Island nation is currently gearing up to capture the overflow of global tourists that will be flooding into the Southern Hemisphere for those games.
So if we look at this chronologically, 2026 is this bizarre, fleeting window of opportunity.
It really is a sweet spot.
You have a territorial government desperate to incentivize travel, a local island population that is incredibly eager to welcome back the tourism dollars they lost, and an environment that has literally been resting undisturbed for 2 years.
Which is exactly why the current prices are what they are. So let's look at the baseline here.
Okay, lay it on me.
If you are flying from Sydney to Lifou right now, you are looking at an average of $950 for a round-trip ticket.
Oof. I mean, that feels steep for a regional flight.
It is steep, yeah. And that is basically the access tax of getting to a remote Pacific island right now. But once you pay that airfare, the ground costs plummet to levels that make 0 cents for an island this beautiful.
Right.
I mean, budget rooms start at $36 a night. If you are a self-catering backpacker who rides a bicycle and utilizes the world-class free shore snorkeling, you can legitimately hit a daily spend of $70.
That's crazy.
And if you are a mid-range couple wanting a rental car and nice dinners, you're looking at $180 to $220 a day total.
And what are you actually buying for that money? Let's paint the picture. You are not buying a generic resort town.
No, definitely not.
There are absolutely 0 traffic lights on Lifou. There's no fast food, no golden arches, no global pizza chains.
None of that.
And there are no cruise ship souvenir strips selling mass-produced plastic junk.
No. What you are buying is access to pristine, untouched coral reefs. You are buying views of towering limestone cliffs that easily rival the famous coastlines of Fiji.
I love that.
And in a detail that I know you love, you are buying the ability to sit by the ocean and eat an entire freshly caught lobster feast for $25 to $35.
The lobster paradox. I can't get over it. We're going to talk more about that later. But to capitalize on this 2026 window, you have to understand the geography and the timing.
Absolutely.
Because this isn't a place where you can just show up on a whim.
No, the geography dictates everything here. So Lifou is a raised coral atoll, and it is huge for an atoll. It's 12,207 square kilometers. To put that in perspective, if you get in a car It will take you about 90 minutes of solid driving to get from the northern tip to the southern end.
Okay, let's explain what a raised coral atoll actually means, because it fundamentally changes the water quality.
Right.
Like, when most people think of the South Pacific, they picture Tahiti or Hawaii. These giant, jagged volcanic peaks covered in rainforests.
Yeah, those are high islands. Lifou is completely different. Eons ago, it was a coral reef under the ocean, and tectonic forces pushed that flat reef straight up out of the water. Because it's entirely made of porous limestone, there are absolutely no rivers or streams on the island.
Wait, no rivers at all?
0 rivers. So when it rains, the water doesn't flow over the dirt and create muddy runoff that empties into the ocean. Instead, the rainwater filters straight down through the porous rock into an underground freshwater lens.
Oh.
Which means the ocean water surrounding the island is unbelievably, staggeringly clear. Because there is no silt, precisely. The interior of the island isn't a lush jungle. It's this dense, somewhat impenetrable green scrubland riddled with deep, dramatic limestone cave systems.
Sounds wild.
It is. But all the real magic happens on the edges. You have Chateaubriand Bay and the administrative village of Way right in the center of the East Coast.
Okay.
In the north, you have the Jokin Cliffs, which are these massive, jagged drops into deep blue water. In the northwest, there's Iso Beach, which offers incredibly calm snorkeling flats. And in the south, you have Luangeni.
And Luangeni is famous, right?
Oh, yeah. It regularly makes quiet lists as one of the most beautiful, untouched beaches in the entire Pacific Ocean.
Okay, so the water is clear and the beaches are stunning. When exactly are we booking our tickets to see this?
You want to aim for the austral dry season, which runs from June through September.
So the Southern Hemisphere winter.
Correct. But winter here means temperatures hovering beautifully between 20 and 26 degrees Celsius.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, that's about 68 to 79 degrees Fahrenheit. You get low humidity, and the trade winds are very consistent, which keeps the mosquitoes down and makes the evenings incredibly pleasant.
Nice.
Plus, there's a massive biological bonus during this window.
The whales.
The humpback whales. From July through September, they migrate directly through the deep channels of the Loyalty Islands.
That is so cool.
It really is. You can genuinely sit on the cliffs at Jokin and watch humpbacks breaching offshore. Now, the prices for accommodation are slightly higher during these months, but as we've established, higher on Lifou is still incredibly modest.
Now, I have to push back on this a little bit. You're telling me June through September is the peak season.
Yes.
Every instinct I have as a traveler tells me to avoid peak season because peak means crowded. And, I don't want to fight for a spot on the sand.
That is a completely valid fear for places like Santorini or Bali, but we really have to redefine what crowded means on an island of 10,000 people that just lost 52% of its tourism base.
Fair point.
In 2026, independent travelers, people who fly in and rent a car for a week, are so incredibly rare that you will likely be sharing Eason Beach with a few local families and literally no one else.
But what about the cruise ships? Didn't you say they came back?
They did come back. But cruise ship crowds operate on a very strict microschedule. They are 6-hour day trippers.
Oh, okay.
When a ship docks at Isa, those passengers are funneled directly to the main beach. They visit a temporary souvenir market set up right by the wharf. They maybe take a guided bus tour to a nearby church, and then they get back on the boat.
So they are renting cars?
No, they do not rent cars and explore the hidden coves. If a cruise ship is in port, you literally just drive 5 minutes down the road and you have the entire rest of the island to yourself.
Now that is the ultimate travel hack. Let them have the wharf. I'll take the empty beach down the road.
Exactly.
So what about the rest of the year? When should I absolutely avoid going?
Do not go between December and March. This is the heart of the Pacific cyclone season.
Okay, good to know.
Specifically, January and March carry immense rainfall risks.
Does Lifou get hit by direct cyclones often?
Well, it's not just about direct catastrophic hits, it's about the peripheral weather systems. A cyclone spinning 300 miles away will generate enough wind and swell to completely disrupt the inter-island ferry services and ground the small domestic aircraft.
Oh, so you just get stuck.
Yeah, if you travel in February, the risk of getting physically stranded on Lifou or stranded in Nouméa unable to reach Lifou is very high. The hotels might offer a slightly lower rate, but the risk-to-reward calculation is terrible.
Yeah, that sounds stressful.
It is. It is just not worth sacrificing your limited vacation days to sit out a tropical storm in a gîte.
Fair enough. What if I want to squeeze my budget just a little bit more, but, avoid the cyclones?
Then you look at the shoulder seasons. April to May or October to November. These are the sweet spots.
How much cheaper are we talking?
The rates drop by about 10 to 20% compared to the June-September peak. You might get a bit more humidity or a random rain shower, but it's generally beautiful. Just keep in mind that October and November are when the cruise traffic really starts to pick up frequency. But again, the island completely resets to absolute silence within hours of those ships pulling their anchors up.
Okay, let's talk about the actual mechanics of getting there and what it feels like when you do.
Yeah.
We touched on the Nouméa transit, but let's break down the arrival.
All right, you basically have two logistical choices. Option 1 is flying into Nouméa Airport. The airport code is LIF via Air Calédonie.
And where do you catch that?
You catch that flight from Magenta, which is the domestic airport in Nouméa. Option 2 is taking the Batiko ferry from Nouméa.
Let me stop you right there. How long is that ferry ride?
It is a 16 to 20-hour overnight service, depending on the sea conditions.
Yeah, I know exactly which one I'm taking. Unless I am on a sabbatical where time means absolutely nothing to me, I am not spending 20 hours on a ferry crossing open ocean swells.
I don't blame you. The flight is absolutely the smart call for anyone constrained by standard vacation time. It's a quick, incredibly scenic hop over the reef, but the arrival experience at Nouméa Airport is where the reality of Lifou truly hits you.
Paint that picture for me.
So you land on a single-strip runway surrounded by scrubland. You walk off the tarmac into a terminal that is quite literally the size of a large living room.
The living room.
Yeah. There is no bustling arrivals hall. There are no metered taxis lined up outside waiting to hustle you to a resort. If you haven't prearranged a transfer, you are going to be standing in the gravel wondering what to do next.
Which is either incredibly charming or deeply alarming, depending entirely on how type A your personality is.
Exactly. You absolutely must prearrange a shuttle with your accommodation, which will cost you about $15 to $25 to get into the main village of Wei.
Okay, that's not bad.
No, and many of the mid-range options will actually include this transfer in your booking. But the most profound part of landing at that tiny airport isn't the logistics. It's the massive psychological vibe shift.
You're talking about the contrast with Nouméa.
Yes. Even in early 2026, when you transit through Nouméa, you can still feel the lingering undercurrent of the post-riot tension.
Right, because of what happened in 2024.
Yeah. You might see patches of boarded-up shops. You will notice a visible, lingering French military or gendarmerie presence in certain areas. You carry that low-level urban tension with you to the airport, and then you land on Lifou, and the quiet is so absolute, so profound, that it almost feels deliberate. It feels like an exhale.
I love that. So you get in your prearranged shuttle, and you start driving toward Wei. What do you see?
You're driving through this relatively flat, dense green scrub, and suddenly, out of nowhere, you see these massive, imposing 19th century church structures.
Really?
Yes, Lifou is a highly, highly Christianized island. The history here is deeply rooted in the arrival of both Catholic and Protestant missionaries in the 1800s, and religion remains a massive pillar of daily Kanak life.
Then you arrive in Wei, which is the administrative center of the island. But we need to manage expectations about what administrative center actually means.
We really do. When you hear administrative center, do not picture a bustling downtown.
Right.
Wei has a small supermarket, a post office, a bank, a handful of very casual restaurants, and a local market. That is the extent of the metropolis.
Which makes your next point absolutely critical.
Yeah.
You cannot rely on public transport here.
You cannot. There is essentially no functional public transport network for tourists. If you actually want to see the Jokin Cliffs in the north and the Luangoni Beach in the south, you absolutely need a rental car.
And what's that going to cost?
A standard no-frills rental car will run you $55 to $75 per day. And as we'll discuss later in the logistics traps, securing one is not as simple as walking up to a Hertz counter.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is mandatory for exploring, but it requires serious planning.
Okay, so you survived the room-sized airport, you've picked up your mandatory rental car, and you're driving out of Wei. Where are you actually sleeping?
Let's get into it.
We're going to break down the accommodation scene, which basically caters to 4 distinct traveler types across the 8 named properties on the island.
Let's begin with the budget tier. This runs from $36 to $86 a night. Within this bracket, you have places like the Wanalai Guest House and Chez Benoit Bonua, which sit right at the bottom end, around $36 to $81 a night.
Okay.
Then you have Gîte Fenapaza, located in Mukaweng, which runs roughly $40 to $86.
Now, when we say budget, I think a lot of listeners instantly picture a loud, crowded Southeast Asian backpacker hostel with bunk beds and shared dorms.
Right, and we need to kill that image immediately. That is a crucial distinction. There are no party hostels on Lifou.
So what are you getting?
What you are booking is a gîte. This is essentially a basic standalone bungalow, often traditionally constructed with a thatched roof situated on the property of a local family.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
It is, but yes, you will likely be using shared bathroom facilities in a separate block, and the amenities are extremely basic.
But the trade-off is the cultural immersion.
Exactly. You are experiencing genuine Kanak hospitality. You are staying in a family's backyard, essentially. The gîte model is the ultimate travel hack for authenticity. You aren't separated from the culture by a resort wall. You are sleeping right in the middle of it.
What if I want a private bathroom and just, a little more comfort? Let's move to mid-range.
Mid-range options run from $45 to $99 a night. You have Ches Bella down south in Luangoni for $45 to $90, and Tamanu Beach bungalows in Mu for $45 to $99.
Okay, good prices.
Yeah, these properties are a step up in comfort, but their defining feature is their heavy reliance on the table d'hôte concept.
Oh, explain table d'hôte for those who haven't traveled in French territories.
It literally translates to the host's table. Because there aren't many standalone restaurants on the island, your accommodation is also your primary dining option.
So you eat where you sleep.
Exactly. You don't get a menu with 20 choices. The host cooks a set menu meal, usually whatever was caught or harvested that day, and everyone staying at the gîte eats it.
That sounds amazing, honestly.
It is. These meals will cost you an additional $20 to $35 per person, but the quality of the local seafood and produce is phenomenal.
Now here's where the accommodation scene gets genuinely fascinating to me. There is this massive, glaring hole in the market. I call it the missing middle class of hotels.
It is a defining feature of the Loyalty Islands. There are absolutely zero international mid-range hotel chains. You will not find a Courtyard by Marriott, a Holiday Inn, or a Novotel.
Why is that? I mean, if the beaches are that good, why hasn't some foreign developer come in and built a standard 150-room mid-range block?
It comes down to indigenous land ownership and La Coutume, which we will dive into deeply in a minute. The land is tribal.
Ah, okay.
You cannot simply arrive with foreign capital, buy a beachfront lot on a freehold title, and pour concrete. Development requires deep, complex consensus among the tribal chiefs and the community. This naturally restricts massive foreign development and keeps the island in the hands of the Kanak people.
So if I want something between a backyard bungalow and a 5-star luxury suite, what are my options?
Your main option to fill that gap is the Drehu Village Hotel, located right on Chateaubriand Bay. It costs $108 to $198 a night.
Okay, that's reasonable.
Yeah, it's a solid, reliable, family-focused hotel with standard rooms and a pool, but it is not glamorous. It's comfortable, but you aren't booking it for cutting-edge interior design.
What about the boutique or eco-lodge vibe? Because there's a huge market of travelers who want aesthetic, sustainable luxury.
For them, there is Au Natural Lodge in Hanamin. That runs $72 to $180 a night. It is incredibly intentional, highly eco-conscious, and very quiet.
Perfect for who?
It is the absolute perfect spot for digital nomads who want a serene environment or couples looking for quiet immersion without the footprint of a large hotel.
And then we take a massive leap to the luxury tier.
We do. $225 to $405 a night. We are talking exclusively about the InterContinental Lifou Wadra Bay Resort.
The only one.
Yep, it is the only international flag property on the entire island. It has all the hallmarks of luxury. Overwater elements, a massive pool, multiple dining venues, and full resort infrastructure.
But let's look at those numbers. $225 to $425 a night for an intercontinental with overwater elements. I mean, if this were Bora Bora or the Maldives, that room would be $1,500 a night minimum. Why is it so cheap?
Because the rates are incredibly soft right now due to the 2024 economic fallout. Occupancy rates are a fraction of what they modeled for when they built the place.
Oh, wow.
Because they are desperate to get heads in beds, you are far more likely to pay a rate closer to the $225 floor than the $400 5 ceiling in 2026.
Paying $225 for an overwater resort experience in the South Pacific? I mean, that is a wild anomaly.
It's unheard of.
But whether you are staying at a $36 gîte or the $225 intercontinental, you still have to eat. And because there are so few standard hotels and restaurants, dining on Lifou operates completely differently than almost anywhere else.
It does. It requires intention. Let's start with the absolute pinnacle of dining on the island, which isn't a restaurant at all. It's the bougna.
The signature Kanak feast.
Yes. The bougna will cost you $25 to $40 per person. But you have to understand the mechanics of what you are paying for. You cannot just walk in off the street at 7 p.m. and order a bougna.
Because it takes time, right?
Exactly. It requires all-day preparation.
Walk me through the process. What exactly am I eating?
They take fresh fish, chicken, or local lobster and combine it with root vegetables like yam and taro, along with local bananas.
Yeah.
They drench all of it in rich, freshly squeezed coconut milk. Then they wrap the entire mixture tightly in large banana leaves. Meanwhile, the local women have been heating river stones in a fire. They place the wrapped bundles under these hot stones and bury them in an earth oven.
Oh, wow.
It slowly steams and roasts for hours. The flavors just meld together into this incredibly dense, savory, sweet stew.
It sounds incredible. But again, how do you actually get one?
It is a pre-booked cultural event. You arrange it a day or two in advance through your gîte host or a specific local contact. You are paying for the time, the labor, and the deep cultural connection as much as the calories.
And then there's the seafood, specifically the lobster.
Ah, yes, the lobster paradox.
Explain this to me, because my brain short-circuits when I see the pricing. You can buy a whole, freshly caught, grilled lobster served with classic French bread and butter, either at a roadside stall or at the Way Market. And it costs, what?
$18 to $28.
$18. I live in Sydney. I cannot buy a decent Wagyu pub burger and a beer for $18. How is a whole lobster cheaper than a burger?
It's pure localized supply and demand. The ocean here is teeming with them. The local fishermen pull them straight off the reef. And because there is no massive export infrastructure constantly shipping them off the island to high-end restaurants in Asia or Europe, well, the local market price remains incredibly low. There's zero middleman markup.
That is amazing. Now, if I'm not eating lobster or a bougna, I'm probably self-catering to save money. Where am I shopping?
You'll be visiting Jean Casino in Way. It is a large French supermarket chain.
Let's talk currency, because this explains a lot of the pricing quirks in the supermarket. The territory uses the CFP franc.
Right, the franc Pacifique. The current exchange rate is roughly $1 to 110 XPF. But the critical piece of economic context here is that the CFP franc is permanently pegged to the euro.
Okay.
Because New Caledonia is a French territory, there is a massive French influence on the grocery shelf.
Which means the bread is amazing.
Oh, the bread is phenomenal. Thanks to French subsidies and culinary tradition, a fresh, perfect baguette at the supermarket is just $1.20.
I love that.
And if you go to the local market for produce, it's incredibly cheap. You can easily cover your fresh fruit and vegetables for $4 to $7 a day.
But there's a trap here with groceries, isn't there?
A huge trap.
Yeah.
You have to remember that you are on a remote island, which is part of a remote territory in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Right.
Anything that comes in a box, a can, or a plastic wrapper has to be manufactured elsewhere, shipped halfway across the world to Nouméa, and then put on a ferry to Lifou.
So freight costs are huge.
Exactly. Because of that freight chain, imported packaged goods, think cereal, potato chips, imported cheese, they're 30 to 40% higher than they would be in a major city like Sydney or Los Angeles.
So if you're smart, you avoid the imported junk, you buy the $1.20 baguette, you buy the local fruit, and your total daily grocery budget can sit very comfortably around $20 to $25 a day.
Exactly. And if you do decide to eat at one of the few actual restaurants in Way, it's quite reasonable. A standard main course will run you $14 to $22. And a proper French-style cafe coffee is about $3.50 to $4.50.
But before we move on to building our daily budgets, we have to talk about the most important social dynamic on the island. We touched on it briefly, but we need to dive deep into la coutume.
Yes. La coutume, customary law and protocol, is the absolute bedrock of Kanak society. It is more than just politeness. It is an intricate system of mutual respect, land acknowledgement, and social binding.
Break this down for a Western traveler. If I go to a beach in Spain, I just walk onto the sand because it's public property. Why is it different here?
Because in Kanak culture, land is not a tradable commodity. It is ancestral heritage. When you walk off the main road and down a path toward a secluded cove, you are very likely walking through a specific tribe's ancestral property.
Okay, so you can't just walk in.
No, you must ask permission. And the way you ask permission is through the gesture of la coutume.
What does that gesture actually look like in practice?
If you want to visit a specific tribal site, or you are arriving to stay in a gîte, you present a small, symbolic offering to the host or the local chief.
What kind of offering?
Traditionally, this involves a piece of fabric like a sarong or menu, a 500 franc note, which is about $5, and perhaps a small packet of rolling tobacco.
Interesting.
You explain who you are, where you are from, and you humbly ask permission to be on their land. In return, they welcome you and offer their protection. You must also accept any gifts they offer you with extreme respect, and you must dress modestly, especially around the churches and villages.
Now, I can hear a skeptical listener thinking, I'm a paying tourist.
Ah.
What actually happens if I just ignore this Katoom stuff, skip the gift, and just wander onto a beach with my camera?
Well, you are not going to be arrested, and you are certainly not going to be in any physical danger. But you will trigger the social mechanics of a tight-knit 10,000-person island.
Word gets around fast.
Word travels instantly. If you are disrespectful or arrogant, the legendary Kanak hospitality will turn ice cold in a matter of hours. People will simply look right through you.
Wow.
You won't get helpful directions, you won't get invited to dinners, and you'll find yourself feeling incredibly isolated. You will not be welcome.
It's the ultimate lesson in being a guest rather than a consumer. Respect the culture, folks. It's that simple.
Exactly.
So let's tally all of these costs up. We've talked about the rooms, the food, and the transport. Let's run the exact daily out-of-pocket math for every type of traveler. And we'll do this all in US dollars to keep a standard baseline.
Sounds good. Let's start with the lower backpacker budget. We calculate this at $68 to $85 a day.
Now, hold on. I have to challenge you on this math.
Okay, go with it.
I've traveled in the Pacific. Everything feels expensive. A bottle of imported sunscreen can cost $30. You are telling me I can sleep, eat, and actually enjoy my vacation for $70 a day. That sounds like a miserable trip where I'm just eating instant noodles in a tent and refusing to do anything fun. Prove the math to me.
I will gladly prove the math because this is where Lifou shines if you are willing to abandon luxury. Here is your exact daily breakdown.
I'm listening.
You are staying in a basic gîte like Wanalai for $36 to $45 a night. You skip the imported groceries and spend $10 to $14 on local fruit, a baguette, and some local snacks.
Okay, $45 plus $14.
You don't rent a car. You rent a bicycle for $8 to $12 a day. You splurge on one hot, locally cooked table dinner at your gîte for $22 to $28. And your entertainment budget is literally $0 because the world-class snorkeling right off the shore is completely free.
Okay, let's see. $40 for the bed, $12 for lunch groceries, $25 for dinner, $10 for the bike. That equals $87. If I skip the cooked dinner a few nights and make my own sandwiches, I hit $70. It does require extreme discipline, but I see how it is mathematically real.
Exactly. It's real, but it requires a very specific mindset. Now, let's look at the mid-range traveler, which is where the vast majority of people listening will fall. This budget sits at $160 to $210 per day per person.
What does a day in the life of that $200 look like?
It's a fantastic day. You are staying in a comfortable air-conditioned room at Jurahu Village or an eco-bungalow at Au Natural Lodge for $90 to $130 per person, assuming you were splitting the room cost.
Right.
You spend $10 to $14 on a nice breakfast at a cafe. You grab lunch for $18 to $22. You sit down for a great dinner with a glass of wine for $25 to $35.
Sounds lovely.
And you split the cost of that mandatory rental car, which comes out to $28 to $38 per person. Plus, you have plenty of room left over for one paid activity, like a guided cave tour or a boat trip, ranging from $10 to $65.
That is an incredibly full, comfortable vacation for $200 a day. What about a family of 4? Traveling with kids changes the math completely.
It does. A family of 4 will total $320 to $420 a day combined. The absolute lifesaver here is that the local gîtes and smaller hotels frequently offer 40 to 50% child discounts on the room rates.
Oh, that's huge.
It's massive. And when you book that amazing bougna feast, the adults will pay $25 to $35 each, but the kids are almost always charged half price. If you self-cater breakfast and lunch and split a rental car, a family can have a remarkably affordable island holiday.
Let's swing to the opposite end of the spectrum, the luxury tier.
Ah, yes. The luxury budget sits at $450 to $600 a day total. This entirely revolves around staying at the InterContinental.
Naturally.
You are paying $225 to $405 for your suite. You are eating exclusively at the resort's dining venues, which will run $35 to $60 per meal per person. And your activities are premium booking private boat tours or guided excursions that run $120 to $180 a pop.
Still, $600 a day for peak luxury in the Pacific is comparatively very low.
Very low.
Finally, we have to look at a growing demographic, the digital nomad. If I want to escape reality and work from a tropical island for a month, what's the damage?
If you are staying a full month, expect your total monthly spend to be between $2,800 and $3,400.
How does that break down?
Well, you don't pay the nightly rate. You negotiate a long-term monthly rate at a nice gîte or at Au Natural for $900 to $1,400. You will likely spend $400 to $500 on groceries for the month.
Makes sense.
You budget $150 to $200 for occasional dining out, and instead of renting a car, you rent a scooter or a bicycle monthly for $180 to $250.
Financially, $3,000 a month to live on a Pacific island sounds like an absolute dream. But I know there is a massive glowing red warning light blinking for digital nomads right now. What is the catch?
The catch is the infrastructure. The 4G cellular network has serious persistent gaps, especially in the far north and south of the island.
Oh, no?
Yeah. If your digital nomad job involves writing, coding, or deep, offline asynchronous work, you will be in heaven. But if your job relies heavily on mandatory, crystal-clear Zoom meetings at scheduled times, Lifou will completely break your workflow. The bandwidth simply isn't stable enough for constant video conferencing.
All right, we've covered the math. And honestly, looking at these prices and the sheer beauty of the place, the obvious question is, why isn't everyone going? I mean, if I can get an overwater bungalow for $250 or eat lobster for $20, why isn't my Instagram feed flooded with people on Lifou?
Because of the friction. It comes down to 3 named logistics traps that absolutely ruin poorly planned trips. People see the cheap prices, they hit book, and then they get completely derailed by the reality of Pacific Island logistics.
Let's dissect these traps so our listeners don't fall into them. Trap number 1, the Nouméa transit assumption.
This is the big one. It catches so many travelers. People assume that because Lifou has an airport, they can just fly there. But there are no direct international flights to Lifou. None.
Wait, really?
Really. Whether you are flying from Sydney, Auckland, or Tokyo, you have to land at Latontuda International Airport, airport code NOU.
And here's where the headache begins.
Yes, because Latontuda is situated way up north of the capital. But your domestic flight to Lifou leaves from Magenta Airport, which is a completely different, smaller airport nestled right inside the city of Nouméa.
That's a pain.
It gets worse. You have to physically collect your bags, clear customs, and then take a 45 to 60-minute shuttle drive between the 2 airports, which will cost you another $25 to $35.
Let me use an analogy for our American listeners. This is exactly like flying an international route into JFK in New York, but your connecting domestic flight leaves out of Newark in New Jersey. Except, instead of hundreds of flights a day, Air Calédonie only runs 2 to 3 flights to Lifou per day.
That analogy is perfect. The mechanism here acts as a strict, unforgiving filter. If you book your international arrival and your domestic departure too close together, you are going to fail.
So what's the minimum time you need?
If you don't leave a minimum 6-hour buffer between landing at NOU and departing from Magenta, a slight flight delay or a slow baggage claim will guarantee you miss your connection.
So what is the fix? How do we beat trap 1?
The fix is to remove the stress entirely. Do not try to thread the needle. Either build in that massive 6-hour buffer and accept that you'll be reading a book in an airport cafe for a long time, or intentionally budget a one-night stay in Nouméa into your itinerary.
So make it part of the trip.
Exactly. Let it be a planned stopover, not an emergency fallback when you miss a flight.
Brilliant. Trap number 2, the cruise day pricing illusion.
This is a classic economic friction point. When you are sitting at home researching activities online, the prices you see published are almost always artificially inflated to capture the wallets of the 6-hour cruise ship passengers. The operators know these people have limited time and a high willingness to pay. So you'll see a basic half-day tour listed for $45 to $65, or a quick boat trip out to the famous Kiki Beach priced at $60.
If I'm staying on the island for a week, I don't want to pay the inflated cruise tax. How do I get around it?
The fix for this is actually incredibly simple, but it requires old-school communication. If you are an independent traveler, do not book your excursions online.
What do you do instead?
You email your gîte host or your hotel a few weeks before you arrive. You tell them what you want to do, and you ask them to bundle your activities. Because the hosts have direct relationships with the local guides and operators, they can routinely secure you a 20 to 30% discount off those inflated cruise prices.
It's all about local connections. Okay, trap number 3, which might be the most stressful of all, the rental car scarcity window.
It is the most stressful because if you fail this one, your trip is fundamentally compromised. There are less than 30 rental cars available on the entire island of Lifou.
Wait, less than 30 cars total?
Total. And remember, there are 0 international agencies here. No Hertz, no Avis, no Enterprise.
Wow.
It is a handful of local operators managing small fleets. During the peak months of July and August, Every single one of those 30 cars books out completely. If you just assume you can land at the tiny airport and figure it out, you will find yourself completely stranded in Hue without a vehicle.
And we already established there is no public transport.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a car, you aren't seeing the Jokin Cliffs, you aren't seeing the quiet beaches, you're just walking around the small supermarket in Hue for a week.
Exactly. The fix is non-negotiable. You must book your rental car simultaneously with your accommodation. Do not book your room and think, I'll sort the car out later. You need to lock it in at least 4 weeks out.
I love the deep irony of this destination.
Yeah.
If you want to experience this utterly untouched, spontaneous feeling, barefoot paradise, you have to engage in the most intense, rigid, type A administrative planning imaginable before you leave home.
It is deeply ironic, but it serves a purpose. Whether intentional or not, these friction points act as an incredibly effective filter. The people who refuse to plan or who demand seamless, zero-effort travel simply give up and go to Fiji or Bali.
So it keeps it quiet.
Exactly. The traps inadvertently keep mass tourism at bay, ensuring the island remains pristine for the few who put in the work.
All right, let's assume our listener has navigated the traps. They have their buffer in Nouméa, they secure the local discount, and they are driving one of the 30 rental cars on the island. How safe are they really? Especially given the broader context of the territory right now.
From a personal safety standpoint, Lifou is incredibly safe. The rates of personal crime theft, muggings, that sort of thing are vanishingly low.
That's great.
Yeah. There's a small French gendarmerie presence, but the real security architecture of the island comes from the community itself. It is a tight-knit, self-governing Kanak society.
How does that translate for a solo female traveler? Is it a destination you'd recommend?
Highly recommended. It rates extremely well for solo female travelers. There have been no documented harassment incidents targeting tourists. When you stay at a gîte, the host family takes you under their wing. The briefing materials refer to this as the hosts having reputational skin in the game.
Break that down. What does reputational skin in the game actually mean in a tribal context?
Well, in a community of 10,000 people, anonymity does not exist. Everyone knows exactly who you are, who your family is, and what business you run.
Right.
If a tourist staying at a specific family's gîte is harassed or feels unsafe or has their belongings stolen, it is not just a bad Yelp review. It is a profound stain on that family's honor. It damages their standing among the tribal chiefs, and it threatens their economic survival.
So they take very seriously.
Extremely seriously. Therefore, protecting guests is an absolute cultural and economic imperative. Your host family essentially adopts you.
That is incredibly reassuring. So if crime isn't the risk, what is?
The main risk for a solo traveler is purely logistical. It's getting a flat tire on a remote dirt road at 5 p.m. You need to be somewhat self-sufficient. You need to ensure your phone is charged, you have water, and you carry a basic first aid kit.
What about family travel? You mentioned the budget earlier, but is it physically a safe environment for young kids?
It's very strong for families. You have places like the Iso Lagoon, which is perfectly calm, shallow water. There is virtually zero traffic on the road, so you don't have the anxiety of walking along busy highways. The pace is incredibly slow and forgiving.
Let's talk about health and medical infrastructure.
Medically, it's a very straightforward destination. There are no mandatory vaccines required to enter, and there's no malaria risk, so you don't need to take preventative pills.
That's a relief.
The only real health mandate is environmental. You must bring reef-safe sunscreen to protect the coral. However, the medical infrastructure on the island is basic. There's a small clinic, but the nearest major hospital capable of handling complex emergencies or surgeries is back in Nouméa.
And given that Nouméa is an airplane or a 20-hour ferry ride away, what does that mean for insurance?
It means comprehensive travel insurance with explicit coverage for medical evacuation is absolutely non-negotiable.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with that.
Definitely not. If you have a severe accident, say a bad scooter crash or a diving emergency, you will need to be airlifted off the island. You do not want to be paying for a medical charter flight out of pocket.
Finally, we have to address the elephant in the room regarding safety. Political risk. You're probably listening to this thinking, why on earth would I take my family to a territory that just made global news for violent riots?
That is the most common hesitation, and it is exactly why we spent so much time separating Nouméa from Lifou in the introduction. On Lifou itself, the political risk of being caught in violence is exceptionally low.
Because it was all in the capital.
Right. The 2024 unrest was completely Nouméa-centric. But you don't have to take my word for it. Look at the data from the major Western governments.
You're talking about the Foreign Office advisories.
Yes. The Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade DFES and the UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, the FCDO, they monitor these situations obsessively. Both of these massive intelligence gathering agencies have officially downgraded their travel alerts for New Caledonia.
So it's safe to go.
They have moved the needle back to exercise normal precautions, or at worst, exercise increased caution. It is no longer a red flag, do not travel destination. The governments are telling you it is safe to return.
All right, we've done the heavy lifting, we've done the math, we've mapped the logistics traps, and we've cleared the safety hurdles. Now I want to know what it actually feels like to be there. Let's get into the best moments and the honest disappointments. Let's start with the absolute bests.
Best moment number one is the Luanguni Beach sunrise. The cost for this experience is exactly $0.
$0. I love it.
Imagine walking out onto powder white sand at 7 a.m. in July. The air is cool, the sun is just coming up, there are no entry fees, there are no rows of plastic sun loungers for rent, there are no guys trying to sell you a jet ski ride.
Sounds like paradise.
It is just you and water that is so intensely turquoise, it genuinely looks like it belongs in a swimming pool, totally empty. It is pure serenity.
That's moment number two, Jokin Cliffs snorkeling.
The cost here is $0 if you just swim off the shore access, or up to $15 if you opt to explore the cave systems. Jokin is visually stunning. It's not a flat beach. It's a series of massive granite and limestone boulders dropping into deep, incredibly clear water.
Oh, wow.
You dive in and you are immediately surrounded by vibrant coral and harmless reef sharks cruising the drop-offs. And if you do choose to pay the $10 to $11 entry fee to enter the specific cave systems, you have the satisfaction of knowing that money isn't going to a corporation. It goes directly physically into the hands of the local Kanak family maintaining the stairs and access.
And best moment number three, which we have hyped up already, is the bougna feast. It's $25 to $40 per person, but it's not just a meal.
No, it's an entire day's narrative. You get to watch the preparation. You smell the wood smoke from the hot stones. You talk to your host as they weave the banana leaves. It is a profound, deep cultural connection that bridges the gap between tourist and guest.
Okay, we've painted a beautiful picture, but we promised an honest verdict, which means we have to flip the coin. What are the honest disappointments? Where does Lifou let people down?
Disappointment number one. The interior of the island is visually underwhelming. We talked about it being a raised coral atoll. Because of that geology, it is essentially a flat, scrubby green corridor.
So no dramatic mountains.
None. If you are going to the South Pacific hoping to hike up jagged volcanic mountains, stand under roaring waterfalls, and trek through thick, misty jungles, you will be bitterly disappointed. Lifou does not have that topography.
Disappointment number two, a very thin restaurant scene.
Yes, if you are a spontaneous foodie who loves walking down a vibrant lantern-lit street at 8 p.m., browsing menus, and deciding between 5 different cuisines, Lifou will frustrate you deeply.
Right, because it's so small.
Hue has very few dining spots, and the quality can be highly variable depending on what supplies arrived on the ferry that week. You are largely tethered to your gîte table d'hôte.
And disappointment number three, internet connectivity.
The 4G network drops constantly, particularly when you travel to the far south near Luanguni or the far north near Jokin. It is perfectly fine for sending a quick WhatsApp text to your family to say you're alive, but it is absolutely terrible for streaming a movie or doom-scrolling social media.
Now, I look at that list of disappointments, a flat interior, no restaurants, and spotty internet. And honestly, I think we need to reframe them. Why are these actually positives?
Because they are the exact reasons you choose Lifou over a hyper-developed destination. You choose this island because there isn't a bustling restaurant strip selling overpriced cocktails.
That's a great way to look at it.
You choose it because the Wi-Fi is bad, forcing you to actually put your phone down and look at the ocean. Those so-called flaws are the very friction points keeping the island isolated, quiet, and fundamentally unchanged by mass commercialization.
Which brings us perfectly to the alternatives. If the lack of restaurants or the terrible Wi-Fi is an absolute deal breaker for you, where should you spend your money instead?
If you look at the broader Pacific, alternative one is Vanuatu. From a financial perspective, Vanuatu has a very similar daily budget profile, running about $65 to $185 a day, but it has vastly better air access.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can get a direct flight from Sydney to Port Vila for $620 to $850. That completely removes the Nouméa transit trap, and it is $100 to $330 cheaper than the complicated Lifou routing.
Plus, Vanuatu solves the topography problem.
Exactly. Vanuatu is volcanic. It gives you that developed infrastructure, the massive elevation, the dense jungle hikes, and the waterfalls.
But what is the drawback of choosing Vanuatu over Lifou?
The trade-off is crowd density and water clarity. Vanuatu is much more developed for mainstream tourism, meaning it is significantly more crowded. And because it has those high mountains and rivers, the runoff means the beaches and lagoons simply aren't as blindingly crystal clear and pristine as the limestone-filtered waters of Lifou.
What if I want to stay within New Caledonia, but Lifou just sounds too remote?
Then alternative 2 is Île-des-Pins, or the Isle of Pines. You still have to deal with the same routing complexity through Nouméa, but it's a very quick, cheap, $212 round-trip domestic flight from the capital.
It's famous, right?
It is famous globally for the Oro Bay Natural Pool, which is stunning.
But the drawback there?
It is noticeably substantially busier. Île-des-Pins is the crown jewel of New Caledonian tourism, which means it is totally saturated with day trippers coming over from Nouméa, French expats on weekend getaways, and heavy, heavy cruise ship traffic. You will not have the beach to yourself.
So bottom line, how do I choose between these three?
It's a very clean choice based on your priorities. Choose Vanuatu for deep culture, accessible flights, and dense jungle. Choose Île-des-Pins if you want an easy, stunningly beautiful, but somewhat crowded beach extension from Nouméa. But choose Lifou for total, uncompromised, quiet isolation.
Okay, we have arrived at the end. The Matrix. We promised 5 distinct travel verdicts at the top of the show. I am going to call out the traveler type, and you are going to give us the final verdict on whether Lifou in 2026 is worth it. Let's do it.
I'm ready.
The backpacker.
Yes, but it is highly conditional. Hitting that $68 to $85 a day mark is entirely achievable, but it requires intense logistical discipline. You must commit to a minimum 5-night stay.
Because of the transit?
Yes. The Nouméa transit alone will eat 2 full nights of your trip. If you only have 3 days, do not bother.
The mid-range traveler.
Strong, yes. At $160 to $220 a day, Lifou represents the absolute best value window in the entire Pacific right now. The InterContinental is drastically underpriced for what it offers. This is a genuine once-in-a-decade opportunity to see an untouched paradise before the 2032 Olympics absolutely changes the economic reality of the region forever.
Family.
Yes. Expect to spend $320 to $420 a day total. It is a phenomenal destination for kids aged 7 and up who can confidently swim, snorkel, and handle the slower, unplugged pace of gîte life.
But for younger kids.
However, I would say it is very hard for families with children under 6 purely due to the exhausting complexity of the transit and the lack of high-end pediatric medical facilities.
The luxury traveler.
Yes. For $450 to $600 a day, it is perfect for quiet, spectacular isolation. The environment is world-class. However, you must temper your expectations. Even at the InterContinental, the power might flitter, and the service will be island time.
So don't expect the Maldives.
Exactly. If you demand flawless, hyper-attentive Maldives-style mega resort service where a butler unpacks your bags, you will be disappointed. If you want luxury in an authentic setting, you will love it.
And finally, the digital nomad or the solo traveler.
Conditional, yes. For the nomad, the $2,800 to $3,400 a month is a phenomenal cost of living proposition for a tropical island, but those internet gaps will break Zoom-heavy workflows. You must be able to work offline. As for solo travelers, the experience is incredibly profoundly safe, but be prepared, it will be socially very, very quiet.
Incredible. We have covered the staggering prices, the 3 massive logistical traps, the flawless beaches, and the complex, impartial reality of 2026.
We have. But before we sign off, I want to leave the listener with a larger philosophical question to mull over.
Okay.
We've talked extensively about the territorial relaunch plan, the goal to flood this region with 250,000 tourists driven by the 2032 Brisbane Olympics. If that plan actually succeeds, can Lifou's delicate Lac Coutume system and its fragile 10,000-person infrastructure actually survive the influx? Or, by broadcasting this deep dive and making this recommendation today, are we actively contributing to the end of the very untouched paradise we are praising?
If this gave you the honest verdict you needed, follow the show. New episodes drop every day.
That is the honest verdict from Sil and H.